Jackie, should it be hands off the family home? What do you think?
It's amazing how sacred, you know, the family
sacred.
home is in this country in particular, and the debate about that we've been having about the entitlement mentality and lifters and leaners just absolutely doesn't include, you know, we'll happily read a tabloid report about housing commission residents who are trashing their houses, but we won't, you know, it'd be funny to see the same sort of thing like the $1 million, you know, the pensioner sitting on $1 million apartment or $1 million property down at Mossman. I think it needs to be treated really carefully, and you know, any changes could never be done retroactively, and they'd have to be, you know, have to be grandfathered. But I don't see, on principle, why the wealth of the family home shouldn't be included when we're looking at the overall mix, I suppose, of wealth and whether or not people deserve to get a government handout, which is what the pension is.
Tim, should the family home be ruled out?
Well, it's exactly as Jackie just said. It has to be engaged with respectfully and carefully, because a lot of people who have been living in their homes for long periods of time have seen a massive growth in their asset base, but it doesn't mean that they're cash well off. And so if there was to be a discussion about including it, it needs to be have some sort of means test or threshold level where it has to be above a level where if somebody sold their home, they wouldn't be in a position where they were harmed. But I have to say, from an intergenerational perspective, I struggle to understand why young working people should pay for the pensions of a much older generation when they may be sitting on a home that's worth between $2 and $5 million, while at the same time, young people can't even afford to get into the housing market.
Peter, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I think there's a consensus amongst everyone that doesn't have to face a voter that this is a sacred cow that needs to be looked at. And it doesn't make sense, does it? An asset that is a home is privileged over an asset that's, say, a share.
And also, it doesn't mean the home doesn't mean you've had it for 40 years. You could have just cashed in all your super and bought and paid off a mortgage in your 60s, couldn't you?
Indeed. So, you know, what's crying out, you know, and we all know what the long-term pressures of an ageing population, living longer, pressure on taxpayers and that intergenerational stuff that Tim was talking about. So you actually, this is one of those moments where you need both sides of politics to say everything's on the table, let's talk about it. But as soon as one of them fires a shot, as Mark Butler did today, it's almost a form of mutually assured destruction, so everyone pulls right back.
Now, Jackie, if Scott Morrison doesn't want to touch the family home, he could look at the latest report by the Centre for Social and Economic Modelling. They're suggesting millionaire retirees are getting welfare payments worth around $800 million a year.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have a breakdown of where those welfare payments are coming from, but I suspect a lot of it, or even the majority of it, would be the pension, because I think there are ways in which smart, educated people with really good tax accountants, or maybe even mediocre tax accountants, can arrange their affairs so that they're drawing down from their own superannuation a little bit, but also getting the part pension. I personally know quite a few people who've done that. It's perfectly legal, so why wouldn't you? But I'm not sure that it's fair. That report, you know, you just mentioned those figures. That doesn't even count the sort of in-kind taxpayer dollars that these kinds of people are drawing down upon in terms of Medicare payments and other things. So it does
Seniors cards, another one.
Yep, getting all that free travel, you know, just bussing around town on
Steve,
the
it was pointed out today, I think, by Richard Dennis, that there's already a scheme in place that allows you to draw down on your family home, a sort of reverse mortgage. So I don't quite understand why that isn't what everyone's doing and why that wouldn't be the solution.
So Pete, if Joe Hockey wants to address the issue of fairness in this budget, is this an area he should be looking at?
I think looking at the whole way that the different generations are interacting financially is a really big issue that would actually be a circuit breaker for both the government and the opposition. I think we were talking before the show. What struggles for the opposition, if we go the way we're going and they force everything to be ruled out, they're going to have the same problems in a couple of years' time.
Tim, how do you address the issue, though, where people feel like they've paid their taxes their whole life and that they're entitled to get a pension at the end of it? It's been very much a feeling that people have had for years.
Well, if you take that attitude, you have the wrong approach to what social welfare is there for. Social welfare support systems are there to help the poor, not the privileged. And so if people have done well in their lives and they have saved and been diligent, and that's what we should encourage people to be doing, they shouldn't then be sitting there saying, well, I have an entitlement. That's not how it works. That's not how a safety net works. So there needs to be a reorientation in the discussion, because if not, and we know, how it's going to work out, young people, because of the change in the structure of generations and the ageing population and the working population, as well as the longevity of people's lives is going to put a huge amount of pressure on one section of the community who are earning an income and paying tax while also carrying all the cost of a larger population, such as increased housing prices. And then you're going to have another section of the community who is going to be less likely to be working, more likely to be consuming a lot more public resources at the most expensive point of their time. And it doesn't just come an entitlement if they can afford to pay it. And so if people have large homes or homes that are worth a lot of money. And we're not talking about, $50 million. That's a very different proposition. But somewhere between $2 and $5 million and could live in a different arrangement and have a lower cost base, then why shouldn't they be part of it? And reverse mortgages is a sort of a market-based solution that already operates. What's wrong with that?
And Jackie, I guess the big question is whether the crossbenchers, this would appeal to them and whether they might be interested in targeting wealthy superannuants and finding Joe Hockey some actual money that he needs.
Well, they haven't. They don't appear to have been. They haven't been particularly supportive so far in the government's measures to attack the deficit. And I mean, the overall position, if there is a position of the Palm United Party senators in particular, seems to be just a knee-jerk populist one. So that bloc, I wouldn't count on them for anything.
Well, on the superannuation tax breaks, that probably plays.
Yeah, maybe your Jackie Lambie kind of base might go for that. But I mean, I would be targeting the sort of more the Libertarian senators more if you wanted support with that kind of thing. It could feasibly go through the Senate because even though the opposition obviously is lined up against it at this very early mark without even wanting to discuss it.